So thanks to you both for joining us today. We're going to have a conversation about Breonna Taylor and what has happened to her and her family in Louisville. This is a critical situation that's ever changing. And it's a good opportunity to bring folks together who know what's happening, who know what's happening on the ground, who have information about the case. So pleased that we are joined today by Tamika Mallory, the co-founder of Until Freedom, and Lanita Baker, an attorney with Aguiar, injury lawyer, and she's the attorney for Breonna Taylor's family. So thank you both. Very sorry that it has to be under these circumstances. This case is traumatizing all of us. It's horrible. We felt like we've just been hearing about all of these things that are happening in the media right now with Sean Reed, with Nina Pop, with Ahmad, and it's just been one thing after the next. We're dealing with a pandemic. And then we hear about our sister Breonna and with her beautiful, loving smile. And we hear the story and we're just sucker punched again. And it's just, it sometimes feels overwhelming, like how much more can we take? And so, but you know, we're stepping up. We got to do this again. We need justice for Breonna. We have to just do the thing. And I'm so glad that both of you are here to talk to us about what we can do, give us more details about the case, tell us how the family's doing. So let's just start right off with just what happened.
So on in the early mornings of March 13th of this year, Breonna Taylor was at home with her boyfriend, Kenny Walker. They were asleep when they were awakened by someone banging in their door. Not knowing who it was, Kenny fired a shot, which happened to hit who he later learned was Louisville Metro police officer. Kenny fired one shot. In response to that one shot, 3 police officers berated Breonna's apartment with bullets. She had gotten out of the bed to see, you know, they obviously both had gotten out to see what was going on. So Breonna was in the hallway, in a corner in her hallway. And, you know, I walked through that apartment shortly after her death, and you just see a pool of blood, just where she collapsed after being hit 8 times. These officers were shooting from outside into the home through windows that are covered by blinds, curtains. They could not see what they were shooting at. 25 to 30 bullets entered Breonna's apartment. Not only did they go into her apartment, they went into a neighboring apartment through the wall where a 5-year-old slept and his pregnant mom. And they also went through the ceiling into the apartment upstairs. Breonna has a little sister who lives with her. Thankfully, her little sister was out of town that day, because if she was at home, Tamika Palmer, Breonna's mom, would have lost both of her daughters that day, because her room had the most amount of bullet holes in it. So I have no doubt that she would have been hit. Kenny was arrested for attempted murder for shooting a police officer. Now, mind you, he didn't have the intent to shoot a police officer. He thought he was scaring off a burglar. Justifiably. This is a no-knock warrant, so that's one issue, is that no-knock warrant in the middle of the night. Do we not have a right to protect our home?
Right.
They didn't announce themselves. And I don't know when they announced themselves. I do know there's video afterwards of you just hear Kenny saying, "I didn't know it was y'all. I didn't know it was y'all," indicating that had they known it was the police, this would have been a totally different outcome. We filed suit in the middle of April, a civil suit against the 3 officers involved. I guess go back when Kenny had also called Breonna's mom. So he called 911 during this exchange. He also called her mom and said, you know, someone tried to break in and I think they shot Breonna. His phone went dead. She's frantic and tried to call Breonna to see what happened. Breonna's not answering, so she did what any mother would do in the middle of the night, got in her car, drove to her daughter's house. She sees a bunch of police cars. She tries to say, she tries to tell him, "I need to get there, something's happened to my daughter." they send her, they's like, oh, your daughter went in one of the ambulances, go to the hospital. So she went to the hospital, where in talking to the medical personnel, multiple people were like, we don't have that name here. She's like, no, they said they brought my daughter here. So after a couple of hours, they finally confirmed your daughter's not here. She goes back to Breonna's house, where she approaches other officers, and they are kind of giving her the runaround. They ask her, would Breonna or Kenny have any enemies? Do you know anyone who would want to hurt them? And she's like, no, like they don't do anything, like they're good people. And by all accounts, everyone that we've talked to, neighbors, co-workers, anyone that knew Breonna, like her smile would light up a room. She was just one of the friendliest people you would ever meet. And so her mom's shocked, like, why would you ask me a question like that? Like, what's going on? They disappeared again, came back hours later, and she finally was like, what's going on? And then they asked her at that point, like, well, would Breonna and Kenny have been having issues? Could, something be going on with them? And she's like, no, they were just fine. Like nothing, he would never do anything to her. And she's like, where's my daughter? And at that time is when the officer goes, oh, Breonna's still in the house. Not even saying she's deceased, just like she's in the house, but she knew just based off of what Kenny had said. And this happened, so mind you, the raid happened between 12:30 and 1 a.m. By this time, it's already daylight outside. She said it was like 11 o'clock to noon when they finally tell her she's in the house. So she knew she knew the inevitable had happened. They've not gotten any answers from LMPD since this time when we filed the lawsuit. Of course, still, they're tight up, and their reason for being tight up is because there's a PIU, PSU investigation. And I don't know if, from at least in Louisville, and I would assume it's the same way there. Once there's a PIU or PSU investigation, they don't provide any details of anything. That's their way to not be transparent. Although we also see that when they know they're in the right, or when they believe they're in the right, they're quick to share whatever information they think would justify what they did. But we've not gotten anything. The first time that we saw the search warrant was yesterday after they released it to the media. We couldn't get it as the family, or the family, but after, they feel a hit dog will holler, right? So after they feel attacked, they then produce a search warrant for the apartment. We knew that we never disputed, and I know there's some sources that say that they went to the wrong house. We always felt that the search warrant was executed. It was supposed to be for Breonna's apartment. We didn't know the reasons given, because it was the primary suspect of the search warrant is an ex-boyfriend of Breonna. So there wasn't that much contact there. So we're like, well, why would they? And I used to be a prosecutor, so some of my background, I'm like, why would they have probable cause to search her house? Like what led to those? So we finally got that information in the warrant. I still think that suspect, even from being a former prosecutor, that warrant was very vague and was not enough to justify a no-knock warrant on Breonna's apartment. The primary target of their investigation was already in custody when they went into Breonna's home, further negating the need for a no-knock warrant.
Right.
And I mean, at the end of the day, Breonna should still be here.
It's unbelievable to hear these details that we know and that are familiar, but is hard to hear every single time. It is devastating to know the way people are treated, and that the family is disregarded in such a way. And so what's the history of the relationship? What is there a disconnect between, I can only imagine the answer, but what is the history of the relationship between Black people and the Louisville municipality? What's the history?
So this is but one incident involving Louisville Metro and communities of color. I also represent a client who was the victim of basically racial profiling. There's no way around it. He was an 18-year-old young man driving his car. He made a right turn. They pulled him over. They pulled him out of his car simply because his mom had called, and he was like, "Mom, I'm putting you on speakerphone." And he tells him, "My mom's on speakerphone." They pulled him out of his car, bring a drug dog, search his car, have him handcuffed on the side of the road for nearly an hour, only to find nothing after. I mean, and 18-year-old, his mom's a private investigator. He knew, no, you don't have consent to search my car. Why did, like, ask him, why are you patting me down? What have I done? They're not giving anything. Turns out that was part of their strategy of one of the divisions here, people person narcotics unit, which was supposed to be combating violent crime by randomly pulling people over. And basically in policy, it says, use these traffic stops to find drugs and narcotics on people and guns. From the chief's own mouth, only 1 in 10 of those stops turned up anything criminal. Right. And when we say 1 in 10, some of that was just personal use marijuana.
Right. Yeah.
So sounds like you guys have your own stop and frisk there.
Yes. They since changed because they got a lot of heat for that. They changed the policy, but it's still not. You can change the policy, but it doesn't change behavior necessarily. So,
right. So what happens next? Tamika, what do we do next? Because this is obviously a part of a big systemic issue to dehumanize us, to criminalize us, to make us afraid, to strip us of our dignity and our freedom. What happens now? Because we want, we have to do something. This can't continue. What happens now?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me to be on. And I've found working with Lanita and Attorney Baker to be a really incredible union, because when you say, what do we do now? I think that the strategy cannot be the grassroots movement in one silo, the attorneys in another silo, and of course, them working with the family. We all have to be working together. We need a set of demands that will help not only the case, but the attorneys also have to understand the importance of ensuring that their case is a part of the larger narrative of what's happening in the community. And certainly Attorney Baker gets that. And that is something that we're working together on. I think, one, you can't be silent. So whatever your strategy may or may not be, sitting at home or just feeling sorry for Breonna Taylor's family, Tamika Palmer, her mom, and her sister Janiyah is not enough. We have to, as a community, ensure that we're raising our voices and that we never allow this particular police department and all the local authorities to think that they're going under the radar. That's right. Is so unfortunate that for 2 months, we didn't know that this even happened. And now here we are sort of, getting in on the back end to right. try to come and bring attention to something that should have been an outrage from the moment that it happened. But unfortunately, as has been said, there are so many cases that we're trying to address across this country, and so many issues that's happening in the middle of a pandemic right. that you often forget different things that's happening. I think that or are unable to address all of the issues. When I think about the demands that I saw from the Black Lives Matter Louisville chapter, and I think about the demands here in New York City in terms of transparent investigation, in terms of firing officers who commit these types of offenses against people in our community, and the list goes on and on. The list and the demands are the same across the nation. They don't change. They may have some nuance that fits the particular area. So New York doesn't have a Commonwealth attorney as Louisville does, but we have district attorneys, right? The demands for a clear, swift, transparent investigation is so important. The other piece of it is, even in a state where we know in Kentucky that it's highly Democratic, right? There are lots of Democrats in office across the state. And we saw that the governor spoke out. He basically called on the local authorities to do their job and to be transparent and ensure that there's justice for Breonna Taylor, right? That's great. but it's not we have now figured out that this is not a red and blue situation anymore. It's no longer whether you have Democrats or Republicans, because even in those times when we do have people who are in the Democratic Party, we still find that these incidents are able to happen, and that the courts, the system is stacked against us. So we have to be in the mindset of not electing, hiring people who are from a particular party, but of a particular interest. And I know that right now with Brother Ahmaud Arbery and the cases that we see on TV or on our social media out of New York, where we've had massive brutality issues to happen over the last few weeks in the name of social distancing, people have a hard time hearing that voting can potentially solve the issues that we're dealing with. And I don't think that is just that is the end all be all, but all of these things have to happen together. We can't have people in elected office who don't have our interests. And even when we put people in office, if we don't continue to show up and ensure that we challenge them to do what it is that our communities demand, then we have wasted our time going to the polls. So that's one. The second piece is how we're spending our money. How we're spending our money. We're, I don't think that Kentucky, I'm almost certain, Lanita, that Kentucky was never shut down, right? You guys didn't have a shutdown.
We've been shut down. We're not a strict stay at home, but we have been keep your butts in the house.
Right, okay. So as the country is beginning to open in phases in different places, there has to be some consideration given to the idea that we spend and we don't get anything in return, right? We don't get the type of respect for our communities that we deserve. And I think we've got to have some real conversations about how we're going to take our money and put it into things that interest our communities. So whether we're funding elected officials, campaigns, fights, that are specifically going to be of benefit to us. I know that there was a fundraising effort led by, I think it was Sean King and some other folks, to get monies to help support Kenny Walker. Kenny Walker is at home on house arrest for shooting what he thought was an intruder, who he thought was an intruder in his home, without the appropriate monies that he needs to have the right legal defense. He is on house arrest and has been charged with attempted murder against an officer, which is a very serious crime that can send him away for a long time. So when we're thinking about whether we're going out and we need to order everything that you can think of, everything under the sun, everybody's at home, we on Amazon, you get a box a day, 2 boxes a day. Perhaps we don't need to be doing that, but what we should be doing is ensuring that we are pooling our resources to take care of our communities. And there's a lot more that can be said. At some point, we have to figure out how to provide, as Sister Chanel from BLM Louisville said, community safety for ourselves, where we do not need police officers on the ground in our communities interacting with us and enforcing things that we can in fact do on our own. In New York City, we have a management system called crisis management, where we have anti-violence workers who are funded by the city and other private corporations to go out and do first line work, not front line, but first line work, to get there before officers and try to do that work. And we have to have the same. What about a world where the community folks could have said, okay, you want this brother to turn himself in, give us 24 hours to bring him to you. Our sister Breonna Taylor would be with us today if we had the opportunity to do that work for ourselves. That's right. So, we talk all day about it. I think there's a lot of steps that we have to take, but there's some things that we could do right now to try to address some of the disparities and the issues, the brutality that we see happening to our people.
One thing I want to add on to is the election point. One, we got to make sure that we're voting in primaries. We get so used to just at the end, and most of us are typically going to lean Democrat, right, for most races. But we got to make sure we're getting the right Democrat out of primaries. But two, in regards to this case specifically, Kenny Walker was placed on home incarceration by Judge Olu Stevens, who in the past has taken a lot of heat in our community. It's an African-American judge. He did the right thing in this case. He actually heard what Kenny's attorney was saying about Kenny believing this was a home invasion, going through what happened. Not every judge would do that. Prior to Judge Stevens releasing him on home incarceration, Kenny had a $250,000 full cash bond. So, but for a courageous judge, he would still be in custody on that $250,000 bond, no doubt. Yeah. Just the fact that someone set it at $250,000, knowing that he could never make that amount of a bond, right? The primary target that they were looking for, he was bonded out already, while Kenny still sitting in custody. So you got someone that never had any criminal record, and you're holding him because he thought he was acting in self-defense, rightfully acting in self-defense. So in those judicial elections, in Kentucky, our judicial elections are nonpartisan. We got to make sure that we're learning about these individuals, who they were as attorneys, because that's going to tell a lot of how they are as a judge. And,
right.
And yeah.
Yeah, paying attention to the full ticket, not just being distracted by that top ticket, is very important, because those are the people who make the decisions for us on a day-to-day basis. So what are the demands in this case? What do we need? Who do we need it from?
One is the transparent investigation, as Tamika talked about. We definitely want a transparent investigation. It's not sufficient anymore to say, oh, we're investigating it. Well, what are you doing?
Right.
Today, we were actually shocked that the chief of police himself came out and said he wants the FBI to review the PIU's investigation. So the mayor and chief of police asked for the federal government to investigate FBI and U.S. attorneys. One, that the officer fired, and two, that they be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Mm-hmm. And here recently, we are calling on the chief of police to resign because of his repeated accident and bold. He's very bold in the actions that he takes against communities of colors, and then nonchalant when his officers are accused of wrongdoing and commit wrongdoing. It's been scandal after scandal with the Louisville Metro Police Department. Why does he still have a job? And Mayor Fisher, if you're not going to if he doesn't resign and you're not going to fire him, then Mayor, maybe it's time for you to go too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the 911 tape.
Right. Yeah, release the 911 tape.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to make sure, because I've been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where do we send people? So we BLM, blacklivesmatter.com, we have a call to action. We have a link to Justice for Breonna, fightforbreonna.org. Where else should we go?
So right now, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, Tom Wine's office, is prosecuting Kenny Walker. So that office you would want to talk to in regards to actions and asking for Kenny's case to be dismissed. Mm-hmm. The Attorney General's office, which is Daniel Cameron, is now has in its possession the investigation of the police officers. So on a state level, it's Daniel Cameron's office, Attorney General. Mm-hmm. Then if the U.S. Attorney picks it up, that's Russell Coleman here. So.
And how does that help? So if people call, if people send emails, how does it help?
Just knowing that we are watching them and we're not going to let this go, slide under the rug. It's that political pressure that, with the exception of the U.S. Attorney who's appointed, the rest of those are elected officials. So that the political pressure, we are the people that will put them in office or remove them from office. So,
we are watching.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. I want to end with just hearing a little bit more about Breonna, who she was, and a bit more about her family and how her family's doing.
I can't, obviously I'm not the one that can speak to this, but I will say that I think there is some irony in just understanding that Breonna Taylor, as an EMT, was out here doing the work that these police officers are doing.
That's right.
They ought to be ashamed and deeply troubled and remorseful for what they did to this young sister who is in fact a colleague and a peer of theirs, that she is out here dealing with the very people at the very time that these officers are also putting their lives on the line by being out there as a first responder to this COVID-19 nightmare that we've been living through. And to know that this young sister who was doing it all right? Our police commissioner in New York City is so crazy that he actually said today or yesterday in a press conference, he said, these people that that we're basically upset about because the disparities in the numbers, we're looking at the data. Out of 40 people who were arrested, 34 of them were Black for not properly socially distancing. Of 374 summonses that were given out, 370 of them were Black. So we're not talking crazy stuff here, ladies.
No, those numbers.
We're talking numbers. That's what they like.
I heard that mess. Yeah.
Right, because when you're angry and you just saying we think it's wrong and all of that, they say, well, the numbers don't represent your thoughts and what have you, and you all are just talking. No, we're speaking data, your data. They put the data out, right?
That's right.
And he basically began to talk about Black on Black crime. He said, no disparities exist in everything, but no one wants to talk about the disparities in the murder rate and robberies. Okay. He also said the same people that you all are upset about from 10-second videos, which means that he is ignoring the fact that these people are not on video camera. They are living this in their everyday lives. This is their everyday experiences. But he says in 10-second videos, you all are upset, but you don't understand that these are gang members.
Oh, please, I can't.
Everyone. He said they fight with everyone. All these things. So let's just say that that's the profile of the Black men and some young women that have experienced a brutality around social distancing in New York. Breonna Taylor was everything but that.
Right.
She was in her home, resting. She was
ready to go back to work.
That's right. She was an EMT worker. She was a daughter. She was a sister. She was a friend. And she was killed in her home. Right. Similar to our sister Tatiana Jefferson, whose life was also taken in her home. And something has to be done about it. And we cannot, and this is the last thing I'll say, but this is my call to us as Black folks and brown folks and people of color, and even our white allies and others who claim they care about us. We cannot run for, as Attorney Benjamin Crump would say, for Brother Arbery, Ahmaud Arbery, and not stand up for Breonna Taylor and other Black women who have lost their lives or who have suffered state violence in this country. We are too quiet when it comes to Black women, and we must stand for this sister and every single woman who has experienced anything like this and their families. So that's why we're involved from Until Freedom's perspective, and we will continue to stand up and call Breonna Taylor's name.
Yes, thank you. One demand I forgot, and I want to make sure I say that one because it's national, not just to Kentucky, is we have to ban the practice of no-knock warrants.
Yes.
Because it's killing too many innocent people. It's dangerous for police officers. It's dangerous for our people. So we have to put an end to no-knock warrants. But Breonna Taylor, to hear her family and friends talk about her, she lit up a room when she came in. She is very family oriented. She wanted to be a NICU nurse, and it's a shame that this young 26-year-old was not able to achieve that dream. There was a story today of a gunshot wound survivor, who she actually treated when he was going through rehab. And he said just her spirit was so positive that he like when he heard the news that she and he helped her. She helped him so much through his therapy that when he heard the news that she had passed in this manner, he was just like, he was floored and just, wish he could have done something because of how much of an influence and positive influence she was on him. So for some way, he's like, you could tell she wasn't doing this job for the money, but she did it truly because she wanted to help people. So that's Breonna Taylor,
Thank you for that. And just thank you for what you're doing. We uplift the family, we hold the family and with love and strength. We heal through this. We thank you both for the work that you're doing. We thank BLM Louisville for the work that they're doing, and all the folks on the ground who are keeping an eye on this and making sure that Breonna gets the justice that she deserves. And we're just tired of these stories, and it hurts so bad, and it has to stop, because we don't deserve this. Breonna doesn't deserve this, neither do the countless other people that don't have names, whose names are not in the media, who we don't talk about all the time. We don't deserve this, and we have to keep going and try to stay strong. But thanks again for this time together.
Thank you so very much, Kaylin.
Appreciate it.
All
right, have a good night.
You too.